Hey, everybody. Before we begin, I just wanted to make this quick announcement about the podcast. April is National Poetry Month. So, in April, next month, I will be featuring all writers as my guests. More than that, I'm going to be featuring two writers a week. So, rather than having the weekly episodes, on Mondays, I'll have a writer, and then I'll have another writer again on Thursday. And in the following week, it'll be the same thing. A writer on Monday, a writer on Thursday. So you're getting two episodes per week, all April, and they'll all be writers. Some will be poets. Most of them will be poets, but others will be writers of fiction or experimental literature, writers of nonfiction. The idea is just to feature writers and writing craft and to have craft discussions for those who are interested in creating a writing practice or have a writing practice and want to hear how other writers manage their writing practice. So that's what April will be dedicated to. That's sort of going to be the way I celebrate National Poetry Month, and I hope you celebrate it with me. I'm really looking forward to this. I've been curating these episodes since January, sort of reaching out to writers, putting this thing together. And now that they're all been produced, I can't wait for April to come around so that we can all celebrate National Poetry Month together. All right. Thanks for listening, and on with the episode. On with the episode. Oh, on with the episode. Hi, Al. Can you hear me?
Hey, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Thanks for doing this so early in the morning. I haven't been
Yeah.
up this early since before the pandemic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Uh, I woke up at 5 a.m.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, and I did some. Thanks for visiting my YouTube channel videos, and then I also did some Patreon ads. Um,
Okay.
and then I went back to sleep, and now I'm here. And it's
Well, that's good.
yeah. I haven't really learned that much about what your startup is. Um,
hmm
so I figured today you could school me on what you're doing.
All right. Where do you want me to start? Just give you kind of like a level overview of like the products that we make and sort of our customer base, that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I figured too. I figured yeah, tell me what, yeah, exactly what it is, but then also kind of how you got it going. I think
Yeah,
that could be
sure.
an interesting story.
Yeah. So first, I'll just kind of go into what we make. So basically, indoor farming is like a huge growing industry right now, and a lot of the indoor farming practices use something called hydroponics, which instead of using dirt to grow plants in, you're growing plants directly in water. And there's a lot of pros to that. Like, for example, you don't have to be lugging dirt around. The plants can grow a lot larger. Like, because one of the things about dirt, for example, is like the plants have to use a lot of energy to actually like push through the dirt, whereas in water, they can just like expand freely. And on top of that, you can add the nutrients directly to the water, and so that makes them very available to the plants. With soil, you're actually feeding bacteria, which you're feeding the plants. So there's like multiple processes that happen with that. Whereas hydroponics is kind of just like direct nutrients to the plants. So there's definitely benefits to soil. There's these type of benefits to hydroponics. But with hydroponics and specifically recirculating hydroponics, where you have many plants connected together on the same basically body of water, sharing nutrients. Um, the nutrient levels can get really they could fluctuate a lot because the plants are absorbing things, they're taking nutrients out of the water, they're spitting things into the water, and so they're changing the concentration of the nutrients, they're changing the pH, and so it can be very difficult. And so what we've built is a machine that has different sensors, and it actually can sense things like everyone knows pH. It senses the nutrients by something called electrical conductivity. So it sends like electrical signals through the water, and it can tell basically the amount of electricity that passes through, the more nutrients there are, because the nutrients are like that's kind of how it works. We also measure something called dissolved oxygen. So it's just how much oxygen is in the water, and that has a big impact on how well the plant can absorb nutrients. And then finally, we also measure oxidation reduction potential, which, even a lot of our customers don't know what that is. And it basically gives you some idea of the microbial activity of the water. So a lot of data that you're getting from the water. And the best part really is that the machine is able to constantly add nutrients to the water whenever the nutrient levels change. So, typically if you didn't have a machine like ours, maybe once or twice a day, you're going to go in there, you're going to measure your water and you're going to see, okay, what are the levels? Do I need to add something else? And then, you might measure a little bit of stuff out. You might try to mix it in. It's better to do it slowly, but sometimes you can't really do that. But with our machine, it's working around the clock, and based on, like, we have like an application on the web, so because it's a IoT device, it's connected to the internet, so you actually see when the machine is working and you see when your plants are eating. And it can happen sometimes like 20 times a day the plants are getting fed during different times. And so by having this machine, it's keeping everything like super stable, and that's going to help basically you get the best results from your crops.
Is there a limit to the kinds of crops that you can grow in water, or is there some crops that are at risk of drowning?
That's a good question. So theoretically, anything can be grown hydroponically. Like, you can grow even some kind of a tree hydroponic if you really wanted to. But what's typically done is cannabis plants are huge hydroponically, and then leafy greens, lettuce, things like that. They do that hydroponically. Also tomatoes. Those tomatoes are actually kind of similar to cannabis in that they're flowering plants and they have like different stages of growth. Um, but yeah, I've seen other cool stuff. Like I've seen like potatoes done hydroponically, which is crazy. They actually use something called like aeroponics, which is because there's different types of hydroponics, and one of them is basically where they spray like nutrient and water on the roots in the air, and then it kind of drips down into a bucket of water, and it kind of comes back up. And that's actually the system that uses the least amount of water, and that's the kind of stuff that NASA and some other large companies are working with to be as efficient as possible.
Is this the future of food production?
I would say it's a big part of the future. I mean, it really depends because, like, I mean, because you like Star Wars and all that, and we think about like Coruscant, right? So they have, what is it, like a trillion people living on the planet? I think it's like that many people, right? And so the thing is, like, the Earth, we have 7 billion people, and if we actually took up all the space that people would take up, it could fit inside of like one of the states of the United States, or maybe even a city. So like the actual size of humans is not that great. It's just the impact that we have on the planet, the resources that we require to sustain our civilization. And so, like, a lot of our land in the United States like is used for farmland. I know actually more than half of the land is used just for animal agriculture specifically. And so we could be doing things like a lot more efficiently. And so with things like vertical farming, where instead of using a lot of land, you can stack levels on top of each other, you can get orders of magnitude more better use of land. Like, you can actually get the same output for certain crops indoor. You can get like 100 times more output for the same amount of land if you're doing it outdoors, because of you don't have to deal with like different growing seasons. You can stack things vertically, all these things out. You realize that it really adds up to a lot. And so if we become like a much larger species, or if we even want to try to heal our planet better by utilizing our land better, then I think that this could be a major impact on improving the future that we live in.
Yeah, now that you're explaining, I can kind of see just from a visual standpoint. I always go into just imagining what
Yeah.
what it'll look like in space, and I can see like bags of water growing food for astronauts on their way to the first Martian colony that will probably have a church at the center of town because
You gotta have God somewhere.
and so how on earth did you get involved with this? Because this sounds amazing. This is like the kind of startup that I think has a real shot at a sustained growth, a sustained life.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to just kind of go into like my backstory? I mean, because it's just how I grew, like it's how I grew up. It's like like every step of my life has kind of been going towards this. Like ever since I was really young, I was interested in the future. Like I remember even in second grade, I wrote a little article or like a little story about how I was going to make this like watch that was on your wrist, and it had you could watch movies on it and had like little CDs, and you put them in the watch and you could watch your stuff. I didn't know that we didn't need CDs in the future, but I've just been that kind of minded. I wasn't good at school. Like wasn't paying attention to the teacher. I was looking out the window thinking about something else, and so that's why like my ideas are like kind of different than what people are typically thinking about. And like there was a time in my life where I saw this movie, the Zeitgeist Addendum. Have you ever heard of the Zeitgeist film series?
No.
I mean, they're kind of interesting. There's a little bit of wacky stuff in there, but in one part of the movie, they talk about this future city. It's called the Venus Project, and basically the idea is that it's actually a circular city, and like the middle is like a robot that's like controlling everything, and so basically everyone lives super happy there. Everything is taken care of. Everything is done like 100 times more efficiently than it's done now, and it's not like we need more advanced technology necessarily to do this. It's just also like a social and political thing. And so, I was just thinking like, we could be doing things a lot better. And so kind of moving towards more recently when I started my company, I just happened to kind of meet the right person, my business partner, Adrian. Like he's fantastic engineer. And when we worked together, we had like a really great partnership. Like, sometimes when you put your mind together with someone else, you realize that new ideas come that neither of you would have thought of on your own. And so when that happens, it's a special thing. And so we were fortunate to have an opportunity to start a business at our school. And we just kind of started with the idea of like, hey, what if we tried to build grow plants in a box, like a little, 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot cube full of technology that would basically take care of all the different aspects of growing plants. And this actually came from an MIT project where it was like an open source thing that, you could get the instructions, you could put it together. And what we realized in this competition was that this product cost us $3,000 to make this little box that could only grow maybe like 2 foot by 2 foot of plants. And so we were thinking like, that doesn't make sense. Like sustainably, it doesn't seem like a good way to produce that food. But the thing about the technology is you could be growing a lot more plants with the same amount of tech. You know what I mean? So we were like, what if we just took some of that technology and tried to figure out what would be needed in the indoor farming space? Because there's a lot of people that are doing cannabis farming, like that's been indoor for like a long time. And then there's also this new ag tech stuff where they're really getting good at growing leafy greens and herbs and things like that indoors, like in a way that's actually like efficient, or that's they can actually like make a sustainable business out of that. And so we see like those are the industries that are growing. And so we've kind of actually done a lot of research into those fields. So I'll give you a second to respond, but maybe I could go into that a little bit if you want.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Take over.
Okay. Yeah. 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 So basically, what we did, and this is a really good way of starting a business, is like actually talking to customers. Because say I'm an engineer, Adrian's an engineer. We think like, oh, we're technical. Let's do all these things and put it together and make it in a box and or whatever. But you actually need to go out and see what problems people have, and is there any way that we could solve those problems? And so one of the things that I did first was I was calling hydroponic stores. So we got a list of a ton of hydroponic stores, and I was just picking up the phone and calling them and asking them what are problems that their customers have, what are some technologies that you've seen, what are some issues with those technologies, just asking them a couple of questions. I played the student card really well. I was like, hey, my name's Alex. I'm a student from City College studying hydroponics, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people were super nice. And, because these hydroponic stores are basically places that, because you could buy things online, but a lot of people like to go to the store and engage with the employees because they have a lot of experience and they just like to talk about this stuff. So it's just a great source of knowledge that's basically free. And so that really helped us realize like, okay, it seems like building some kind of automated nutrient delivery system that's like could be really helpful. And we've also been to a lot of farms. Like I've probably been to like at least 20 or 30 farms, and we were fortunate actually. Like the reason we got to go to so many is because we got into a program from the National Science Foundation, and so they paid us like $50,000 to specifically travel and go to farms. And so we had a chance to talk to the cultivators, hear about the issues that they were having, see the technologies that they were using, and the more that we saw these farms, like the more people we talked to, the more we realized that like the technology that we were thinking to develop made a lot of sense. And we figured out other stuff from the technology, like because we were first thinking like, okay, like a dosing system, it adds the nutrients automatically, and it uses sensors to know what to add to the water. But we found out that like the actual sensor readings, that information itself was extremely valuable as well. So the value proposition of our product is not only the automation, but it's also the data that it collects. So that could help you get a better understanding of your environment.
You know, back in the 50s and 60s, they assumed that the future was going to look like, over the next century, a sort of pursuit into the energy age. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what we ended up in is the information age. And
Mm-hmm.
all the technology has sort of been informed by the information age. Do you think the next age is going to be sort of food tech?
Um, it's interesting, like age. Like it's hard to say like what the age is.
Mm.
But I would say that food tech is going to continue to be developed. I mean, because it's not only like this fantastic future that we want to live in, where we save all this land and restore the environment with planting more trees and sucking all the carbon out of the atmosphere, but it's actually like being able to survive because
Yeah.
our population is growing. So we're almost to 8 billion. I think that they've said things like maybe by 2050 there'll be like about 10 billion people, and the way that we're farming right now is unsustainable. Because the way that we grow, like when we're doing like monoculture, basically, because different plants work together to absorb different parts of the soil. But if you have like monocultures, they're just taking the same stuff over and over again, and the soil's getting completely destroyed, and they're adding tons of nutrients on top of the soil. It's not like they're just growing out of dirt; they're adding stuff to that.
Mm.
And so the amount of actual growing land is decreasing, and the population is increasing. And so it's actually almost like similar to building like electric cars, like not even for the environmental impact, but just for the fact that like we're going to run out of oil and we're dependent on oil. And if we ran out of like right when we needed it, then we would be screwed. So we need to be thinking about it for like a long time before that. And I kind of see it in the same way. It's like we need to be really developing these technologies so that once there is actual food, like once we actually couldn't be growing the food outdoors anymore, we're already on our way to be growing it in a much more efficient way that we could basically grow anywhere. And like you're saying with space, like if we could grow food in space, then we could grow food in like the desert and all these areas of the world where it's really, really hard to grow food.
Do you follow the experiments that they do on the International Space Station as it concerns, seeding and
I only a little bit. I wish I was following a little bit more, but actually, we're applying to a program with NASA. It's called the Deep Space Food Competition, and it's a little bit of a could be considered a little bit of a distraction right now because we're actually have like a legitimate business, but it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I think that like I would be really excited to get on the moon because we're going to be landing on the moon in 2024 if everything works out with NASA. And so they're going to want to have some experiments. Basically, it's just going to be like a lunar experimental landscape. And so they're looking for, funny enough, like I was talking about, like that food computer farm in a box thing that we made in the beginning, and then we kind of moved away from it. Well, now that's what they actually want us to make. And so, I mean, the one of the reasons I think we should do it is because, look, we actually already did that, but now we have actual, like, real tech. And so we could put a lot of that in the box that we could put on on the moon at some point. But it's like a long process too. Like their competition takes a long time. Um, so yeah, like I mean, that's something that we're interested in doing.
how are you managing your supply chain? Like how does that start?
Yeah. Um, so it's actually not terribly difficult. But like one of the fortunate things is we're basically developing a product that doesn't have that many space constraints. Like it's not like we're building like a mobile phone which needs to like have all this like circuitry in your pocket. It's a product. It should be compact, but it doesn't need to be that compact. So fortunately, we can build it with like pretty reasonable constraints. And so, like for example, we have our pumps, and so that's like two pieces of sheet metal. Like we figured that out is like you could have like a sheet metal like this and a sheet metal like this. They fit together like a perfect cube. And so we're getting that manufactured in New Jersey, and they're a great company doing that. We're purchasing pumps, the actual like parasaltic pumps that go in the module, and so we get that from a company in Florida. The circuitry, we developed the circuitry in house, and we have there's a company in China that actually makes the boards. And so before we were actually having them just make the PCBs, because there's a lot of companies in the United States, like even in New York State, where like they'll assemble PCBs, but even if you order them, they will order them from China typically, and then they'll just put the parts on the board, because like it's so much cheaper for them to do it in China. Like they've really figured out that process. So initially we were just getting like the boards, and then we were getting the components, and we were like soldering things together by hand, and it was taking hours. And a lot of times like they would get messed up, because imagine we had something that was like 1 inch and it had 50 pins on it, and it would always get messed up. And that was the thing that connects to the screen, because you have like a lot of different like data lines going into the screen. And so now we're having the companies that make the PCBs also assemble them for us, and it's just a little bit more expensive, but it's not terribly bad. And for us, like we do want to manufacture in the United States as much as we can, and so that's why we're happy to work with like United States companies. But for the circuit board stuff, it just doesn't make sense. Like it's almost like 10 times cheaper to get it done at these places, and they do a fantastic job. And so then another thing that we're doing is, because I'm telling you about like the pumps, but we also have like a brain, which is called the Alchemist, and the enclosure, we actually are able to 3D print the enclosure. We've been working on that for a long time, and it's amazing that you can actually produce a plastic enclosure that's 3D printed that actually looks great. And so, we're happy with that. Now we probably will go into something else in the future. The issue with 3D printing is it takes a lot of time, because it takes like hours to print one thing. But that's kind of sort of where we're at this point.
Yeah, I'm thinking too, like the fact though that you can solder these things together if in a pinch if you need to is pretty impressive. Do you think it's
Mm-hmm.
important that the founders of a manufacturing company be capable of that, regardless of the fact that their supply chain is doing it on their own, doing it for them?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, the more technical you are as a founder, just the easier it is to start a business. Because we've actually because there was a time when we weren't as experienced as we are now, and so we were hiring people to do stuff for us. So we were hiring people to make circuit boards for us. We were hiring people to do firmware development. We were hiring people to do web development for us, and that costs a lot of money. And also, it wasn't like we weren't even getting really high quality stuff. And it's different when you have someone that's on your team versus you're hiring someone to just do a job for you. Because the thing about these technical things is they're never done. Like you're always trying. You think you're done, and you realize that there's a couple of mistakes. And so basically what we've ended up doing, fortunately, was bringing most of the technology like in-house. And so now we're doing all of the firmware development. We've done all the back-end development. We are hiring someone to do the front end, but that's not, I mean, it's still challenging just to do that in itself, but we do all the circuitry in-house. And so because we have these skill sets, it actually is allowing us to basically make our technology as good as we want it. And I think a lot of other companies, maybe their founders are not technical, and they're like, oh, I want to build this company. Oh, I'm going to hire people to do this. But then unfortunately, they don't have control over how good it is. They can only get such a product. And so that's one of the other reasons that we're doing what we're doing, is because we talk to a lot of farmers, and we've heard that, these other products suck. Like they're not that good. There's problems with them. And, the companies have just kind of focused more on just selling this product that's not a well-designed product. And so because we have all this stuff in house, like, we're able to really make it good and then just keep iterating on it pretty efficiently.
Do you anticipate resistance from the agriculture sector in regards to like, oh, we like it the way we're doing it, you know?
Yeah, I mean so the thing is there's a lot of different people out there that we're selling to, and so we're looking a lot into the cannabis industry right now, and these people are mostly growing indoors and they're tech junkies. Everyone wants the latest tech. They're just looking for ways to improve their process. And so there's a lot of people that want our technology. Like there's much more people saying like, oh, I wish the technology was better than, oh, I wish we just did things the way that we were doing them. And there are people that want to do the ways that they want to do it, and that's fine. So like, those people just wouldn't be our customers. But fortunately, there are so many people that are our customers that, we're going to be okay. And also, one of the things about the agriculture industry is it's a lot of word of mouth. I mean, especially like in cannabis because it's been underground for a long time, so everyone was kind of like talking to each other. It wasn't as much like advertising and things like that. So once some people start getting our system, others are going to follow, and that's already been the case. Like people are talking about it, and when customers start telling their friends about it, they get really excited, and so we see like the word of mouth advertising model for us is going to be huge. And once people see the results that they're getting from using our technology, then people are just going to quickly follow suit because at the end of the day, it's just a numbers game. It's like how much yields can you get? You're trying to produce the most output with the least amount of inputs possible. And so if people can do anything to improve that, they will.
Thanks,
Okay.
Alex, for coming on here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for visiting my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification.